Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Michael from Tennessee. Good to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Right on. Good deal. And I'm going to do the housekeeping stuff. I always forget. Hey, please smash, as they say, smash the like button, share with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and by all means, please tell your friends. I need volunteers, or I can't analyze dreams without dreams to analyze, Also, please, if you like what I do, support my work, you can go to the spring.com link. I got, t-shirts, tote bags, coffee mugs, just a little toss the wizard a few shekels. Also, I have 9 current available works, published works of historical dream literature. You can see it in the banner of the channel. And I'm actively working on book number 10, at which point I'm going to have hopefully a surprise, blowing the surprise now, but I'm going to try and do a book giveaway where one subscriber to the channel, when I hit 1,000 subscribers, will get all a free signed copy of all 10 books. I'll just boom, give them away. That's what I'm planning to do. Enough housekeeping stuff. We'll go back to what we're really here for, our friend Michael and his dream. So as per my usual process, I'm just going to shut up and listen. Michael's going to tell us his dream, and we're going to try and figure out what it means together. So I'm ready when you are.
All right. Well, I'm glad to be with you, Ben.
Thank you.
So I don't really remember the storyline before the ending. I remember some basic facts about it. It was very chaotic. There were a lot of things going on, and I couldn't really pay attention. I remember at some point I was in a car that fell into lava, and a lot of the other people in the dream were old friends I had in high school. But the really significant part that stood out to me was the ending. I was standing behind a house, like in the backyard. There was no fence. And there was a man in off-white robes standing in front of me, and the robes had some red trim around them. And he stabbed me with the tip of his sword and twisted it when it was inside me before pulling it out. And I looked down at the wound, and it wasn't bleeding at all. He walked away, and I turned around to see someone standing behind me in street clothes. They were wearing a black t-shirt and some jeans. And I had the same sword that he stabbed me with in my hand, and I did the same thing. Stabbed the man in front of me and twisted the sword and then pulled it out. After I removed the sword, both my wound and his wound started pouring blood. And we both collapsed on the ground, and I assume bled out, but I woke up at that point.
Okay. I'm catching up on on some of the notes. Just a moment of silence while I... Okay, so yeah, and of course, back to it, kind of talking to the audience, anyone listening, dreams can be partial segments of dreams, even just the end of a larger dream sequence, and they can be extremely short. The telling of the experience can be a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and it's enough. We can get something with that. So that is, as I call it, kind of phase 1, and then we jump into phase 2, being I'm gonna try and dig around in your memory of the dream and see if we can get a little bit more specificity and details. I do something I call rattling doorknobs. I ask a question. There is no answer. I make a suggestion. It's way off base. So be it. That's all part of the process. As I've said before, I'm happy to be wrong if it gets us where we're going. So sometimes that's a necessary part of the process. So you said you do remember some other small details from prior segments of the night-long experience, and that did involve a feeling of chaos, or just the recall of images in your mind feels chaotic now looking back on it. How would you describe that?
That the things that were occurring didn't really make sense to me. Kind of like I was saying, I was in a car at one point and it drove into lava. That's like one image that I have. There was also, it's really hard to remember everything that happened.
You do or you don't, yeah.
Yeah, like I was fighting with other people, and those other people were old friends from high school.
And when you say fighting, like a verbal argument or physical conflict?
No, like physical conflict.
Interesting. Yeah. And you said these were old friends, though maybe not old enemies, so to speak.
No, they were very good friends of mine in high school.
Interesting. And there's probably something there. We may not be able to get too much out of it, but I'm trying to set the stage for why this ending of the dream. So if we're looking at it as a thought process, the one idea connects to the next and even inspires or triggers the next phase of it. So you've got this idea of, say, traveling in a car, you're going somewhere. You've got this conflict with friends. You've got this disaster of crashing the car into lava for some reason. Either it happens to you or you drove into it through some action or error of your own. And that's my wife coming home. Hey, honey, I'm recording. Do you need me right now? Okay, I love you. Bye. She got me a little sign I put on there. It's just a little flashing thing that says the wizard is recording, and I told her I was recording, but that's okay. It's on. You can't see it because it's dark or because it's light outside. I love you. It's okay. I'm gonna leave all this in. Oh, that's okay. And then the idea of conflict with old friends. There's something about what they represent from that time in your life, in my estimation, this is a suggestion anyway, that you are maybe currently in conflict with. Like something about your recent experiences are different or at odds with maybe who you were back then or who they perceived you to be. There's something in there. I don't know if that's is that making sense? Are you getting anything out of those ideas? Like if I turn it over to you and say, what do you make of that? Because I see you smiling, so there's something connecting.
Yeah. So the person I was back in high school when I was around those people, I was very withdrawn and extremely religious. And my friends were not at all. Like we were the nerd group. Mm-hmm. We took like AP classes together, and we would play StarCraft after school. And
I remember those days. Yeah,
fun stuff. But I was kind of an outsider among them because I was also the only one who was really, really religious. My family is very conservative and like fundamentalist Christian.
Yeah. Sorry, we got a dog visitor. He's going to be annoying if I don't put him in my lap. I'm still listening, please.
And I'm very different from that now. I'm not religious anymore, and I'm still really into the stuff that I was into in high school. The same things my friends and I would talk about and do. So I don't know. A lot of that, what you were saying, kind of makes sense.
Okay. So in that broader context, you maybe were recalling being in conflict with some of their opinions at the time. So your brain was saying something about, how would I phrase this? It's saying, okay, remember this iconic image from your past of a certain type of experience when you were in a friend group, but still an outsider, when your beliefs were in conflict with theirs. And it put it in a very physical fighting sense. It had you physically fighting to. Do you remember anything about how you fought with them and whether you won, whether you defeated multiple opponents in a kung fu style, or they were just being mean to you and punching you and you didn't fight back? Any clear memory of kind of how that resolved?
I think the driving the car into lava was part of the fighting. Like that it occurred as a result of the fight, because when I came out of the lava, I was in like that backyard area at the end of the dream.
Gotcha.
I know there was something that happened between that, but I don't remember what it was.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what we're looking at to, in a way, contextualize this ending to the dream. It's like, so you started with the kind of a, what is it? Lava, driving into lava is like major disaster. It's like, this is certain doom. This is certain death. There's something being destroyed or some irrevocable change that's coming out of this. And you may be reflecting on, so if I had to put it in the broader context, your brain is saying, look at how you've changed as a result of these experiences, is kind of the broader context I would put that in. And then we get to now look at where, the trigger to the next scene change, so to speak, was that crashing into lava. And now it puts you in this backyard. And is it a backyard from real life or something that represents something you experienced? Like, have you been in a backyard like that when you were younger, or is that like your current backyard? Any real life connection?
All the backyards that I was in when I was younger all had fences. This was just like the back of a house, and it was kind of in the middle of nowhere. It was like a cottage in the middle of a field. The only connection I can make to that is another dream that I had a long time ago that was significant.
Yeah.
Where there was another cottage like that. But the surroundings looked kind of different.
Okay.
Like this one, it was foggy and the grass was green and it was like a very wet environment.
Interesting. It's nice having you volunteer those details, because that's something I might not have thought to ask. Was there moisture? Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not, but I don't think I would have thought to ask it. This is interesting too. You said it was it's like a cottage in a field, but this experience of that basic type of setting was different from a prior experience. So it may be, I don't know if you can give me anything on this. You can or you can't, but this seems to be, now that since you remembered it that way, this seems to be an icon connected to a prior experience. So that icon in the prior dream was telling you, look at this type of thing in this way based on this imagery. If you had to connect the two by their common denominator, common iconography, does anything come to mind? What it would represent being in this type of place?
This place, if it's the same one, is in the other dream, it represented home.
Okay.
Because, yeah, we can get into what the other dream was if you want to.
I was just thinking that particular repeating icon seemed important, and it's good that it evoked that feeling of this feels like home. There's also something there where you talked about being withdrawn, and before we turn on the camera, we said we share some particular attributes that lead me to think that you may be similar to me in the idea of home is someplace with a lot of space around it, and it's an empty space, as in there's not a lot of people there, and that's actually where you and I might both feel a similar kind of comfort, being a little more distant, a little more room to breathe, a little less forced interaction. You're not living in a giant apartment complex where you got to say hello to 15 neighbors every day. That's a different kind of comfort zone for different kinds of people. I'm rambling though. So that is interesting that you're back in this iconic representation of a place that feels like home. And it's got lots of space, and it's this cottage, and there's greenery, and more or less an even terrain, trees. I mean, you mentioned grass. Is it kind of Nebraska grassland, or is it more hills and trees? And how would you describe it?
The area is like hills, and it's covered in grass. In the other dream, it's wheat around the cottage.
Okay.
And in this one, there wasn't any visible wheat, but it was so foggy I couldn't see that far.
So there was actually a limiting factor to your vision around the cottage.
Yes.
You knew you were in the backyard. You could clearly see the cottage. You could clearly see grass. You knew there were hills. And but then there was I don't know whether phrase fog of war comes to my mind, where, because we both play the real-time strategy games, and you haven't opened the map yet, you don't know what's over there, so there's this, in some ways, kind of that iconic representation of, you don't know what's beyond this boundary. You literally can't see it, too much fog. So did the sensation of the fog feel threatening or compressing, or any kind of negative connotation to having your vision restricted in that way?
No, it didn't feel restricting at all in that sense. It just kind of felt like that was the environment at the time.
Okay. Felt perfectly normal.
I still
in the dream.
didn't. Yeah, it felt normal. I still didn't. I was mostly focused on the man who stabbed me,
Certainly.
and then the man who I. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the strongest impressions. But this is what I do. I get down to, like, why am I asking 5 minutes talking about fog and moisture and whatnot? Because that could have. Oh, go ahead. I didn't hear you. Sorry.
I just said I imagine those have some significance too, the surrounding factors.
Yeah. It's like, so by digging into that a little bit and trying to wrap my brain around what it means, sometimes I come to the conclusion it doesn't mean anything, or at least what it means is not that we're not going in the direction of an oppressive limitation. It's more of, it seems to me more like, you don't need to see what's beyond this because you need to focus on what's right in front of you. And that's an entirely valid approach to looking at that too. It's like, don't worry about what's in the hills around you, because it's not relevant to what you're about to experience. So sometimes the brain does that. It just shows you what you need to see to get the point across, to represent the idea it's processing. Do you remember day, night, distinct impression of a sun, or the fog was, like a dome, was just fog everywhere?
It was fog everywhere, but it was lit.
Okay.
So it was probably during the day, just foggy.
Okay. Yeah, and when you said wet environment too, you had a sensation or any strong impression of, the grass is dewy, that kind of thing?
Grass was dewy.
Does that bring anything to mind when you just consider that? Makes me think of slippery footing. I don't know.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I was in elementary school and we'd go to school and there was like frozen dew on the grass.
Oh yeah.
And
like
we would
frosted.
run around the field and slide on the grass.
Interesting.
So yeah, just definitely a slippery environment.
I would I'm not asking for anything specific now, but kind of keep that idea in mind. When these images from our past come back and it's like, it's like that when I was a kid, and the slippery sliding grass, and that was probably an experience you remember fondly.
Yes.
So yeah, so definitely, and it's like the context of it is specific as well. If you had, say, a trauma from that time of like, I went to slide on the grass and I did, but I broke my arm because I landed too hard the wrong way, and that had an effect on me, and my arm's still sore today. Those kind of details from the past. It's like, whoa, that's why that's in the dream. But so you've got a lot of positive feelings and associations with all of these icons. I mean, this is not coming across, if I had to take a guess, not coming across as a nightmare necessarily, even though some of the imagery is disturbing, stabbing people, etc.
Yeah, I was not scared in the dream at all.
Okay, good. Yeah,
I was a little kind of freaked out that I got stabbed because it was odd.
For sure.
But then when it didn't bleed, I felt normal.
Yeah, and that's the next strange thing. So we finally, like 10 minutes later, gotten to, I'm sorry, Butters. I need my arm back. All right. Finally gotten to, let's talk about the man. And now we got the kind of setting nailed down. Oh, just before we move on, I think we kind of got an impression of what the cottage means, but any strong impression of what it was made of course, house materials, but like, was it stucco painted? Was it old, dilapidated? Was it, thatch straw roof like medieval times? Any strong impressions of those kind of things?
Yeah, it was stucco on the outside. There was a single window in my vision on the back of the house. and the roof was red tile.
Okay.
I guess the colors of it kind of were similar to the robe the man was wearing. Like the color of the stucco and the red tile on the roof, they were similar colors.
Okay. When you think of that, the colors being reflective of each other, reminiscent of each other, similar to each other between the man and this house, anything come to mind?
Well, with the house representing home and the man stabbing me, my family hurt me in the past. Not physically, but emotionally. Like, I had an experience with kind of forming my own beliefs, and they're different from what my family believes. And them not approving of it, and like kind of making some poor decisions on how they interacted with me.
Gotcha.
Things said, and all kinds of stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe there is a strong connection there. I don't want to hold on to that. I hold a lot of ideas. Remember that song from the 70s? I hold on loosely, but don't let go. So I try to hold these ideas loosely. Like I don't want to forget that's a possibility, but I don't want to grab it like nail it down. Sorry, kitty. I scared my cat. He's sleeping on top of my computer there. Speaking of which, let's close this file. Whenever the cats are sleeping on top of the computer, I watch my CPU temperature to make sure it's not overheating. My rig is like 10 years old at least. I don't even know how it runs any of these modern programs. Yeah. But okay. So the idea of holding on to that idea of very likely connection to home, family, and the sequence of events too is very suggestive that that's a good potential connection, because you're back in the, so you've got the, once again, kind of reviewing the arc, conflict with friends from your past, and then again your brain saying, okay, remember when this happened, and then now link it to this home-like feel, restrict your vision to just what's important right in front of you, look at the nature of the house and see that this person is similar. And then did you have any sense of the robes and the color was very distinct, and robes suggest religion too. That's kind of a religiously iconographic image. Religious people wear robes. Did you have a sense of who the person was? See their face, features, look like anyone you knew or not?
I didn't really pay attention to the face, and I didn't recognize the person. Okay. I could tell they had black hair, but the only things I noticed about them were that they had the off-white and red trimmed robes, and that the sword wasn't sharp. Like the tip of the sword was rounded, kind of like a nail file looks.
Okay. Interesting.
But I didn't remember anything about the way the person looked.
Any sense of their age? Old, young?
Probably 50s.
Okay. Late middle age, yeah. Okay. So someone, and there's some iconography in there too of the idea of paternalistic religious figure of a certain age of wisdom in a sense, or where they've achieved some kind of power in their life or authority. So there's something going on with that. And how did the sequence play out? Like if you were, like, I know you described it, but you realize you're in the field, you see the house, or you're aware that it's there and its features, and then do you turn suddenly and you see the man, or he was always there right in front of you? Did he suddenly turn and surprise you with the stab, or was it more like slow motion, almost gentle puncture? How did it play out?
So the sequence was I'm like looking at the side of the house, and I look down at my feet and I see the grass, and I look around and see kind of the fog in my peripheral vision. Um, and then when I look up from my feet, I see this man standing in front of me. Um, and my eyes go directly to the sword that he's holding.
Mm-hmm.
And he's holding it like kind of relaxed at his side. And then he brings it up suddenly, not quickly, just immediately when I see him, and stabs me. It looked like it went between my ribs, kind of below my heart on the left side.
Okay. I was going to ask that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when it was in there, he twists it 90 degrees and then removes it. And I look down at the wound, and it's just there. It's almost like it's a flap. Like it's open, but it's not bleeding.
Okay. Interesting. We might have to come back, because my idea of trying to put some pieces together is it's not forming in my head necessarily, but it feels like this particular sequence is important. Certain missing elements of, like, if you're going to be stabbed, you would think someone is aggressive, maybe angry, but he seems passive. It seems perfunctory. It seems like he's going through the motions. Go ahead.
It's like it's just what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like he was angry at me or fighting or anything. It's just like he was performing a duty.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to wrap my brain around too. And it's almost like, if we were to say relate it to your struggles with your family, is some of them probably felt obligated to treat you poorly because of their faith. Like that was their duty. Like that's what they had to do. And that put them and you in this awkward position of being in conflict over beliefs, where I don't know that either side of the equation actively desired to hurt the other. I mean, we're not dealing with malicious people necessarily, even though they may have gotten frustrated and acted poorly. And don't let me speak for you. If some of them were malicious, please, you feel free to say so. But this is your brain definitely focusing on a different type of infliction of harm, where it was duty bound or incidental. It's like the harm wasn't the point. It's like something that had to be done for another reason.
Yeah, it was the conflict with my family. They were not malicious at all.
Okay, good.
They were
That's a
just
whole nother level of shit. Yeah.
Yeah, they were just kind of raising me how they wanted to, like how they were raised, and my grandparents were involved as well. And
What
I don't
they
know, it
thought
was
they were supposed to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they've apologized for the way they treated me at that time. It doesn't take back the wounds, but
yeah, you can't unstab someone. You can only let the wound heal. Yeah, for sure. And that so is this dream contemporary with some interaction with your family in the recent past? You know, you said you had the dream 2 days ago. Anything happened in the week prior that you might still be processing?
not with my family.
With some other relationship, possibly?
I don't know. When I moved out, the reason why I moved out to Tennessee is because my brother lives out here.
Okay.
And he and I have similar experiences. But he didn't change his beliefs as much as I did. I don't know if my interactions with him recently have contributed to this dream occurring. They might have brought up some memories and things like that. So they could be related.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a specific. I go to the word trauma. You know, there's things that are like very sudden and impactful and deeply emotional, and then there's some things where it's just like the nature of recent patterns of interaction with others or patterns of behavior in your life can bring up questions about, why do I do this? What does this mean to me? So there does seem to be some, and again, it's all this connected string of thoughts that just never stop. They don't stop in our sleep, and then they continue when we wake up, and then we have new experiences to process, and then we process them in context of everything we've been through in the last day, in the last week, in the last month, in the last lifetime. So that almost sounds broad, like what is it, the spiritual trope of, you know, we are all one in the great wheel, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But it's true, but we all can also narrow it down a little bit. So, but these recent events of moving to be near family that specifically had some similar experience growing up in the same household, and maybe even, as you brought up, analyzing in your own mind the difference between how much or how little and in what way your beliefs change compared to what you're now experiencing of him, reflecting some of those same beliefs that seemed like they changed less. So there's something, I think there's something going on there. And again, we'll go, that's why I do this in, we're just still in phase 2, and we're, you know, half an hour in. And we haven't even gotten to you turning around and stab the other guy, because that's going to be relevant too. But what was I going to say? No, completely lost my train of thought. That's all right. We can go on with it. What did his the robed stabby man? He pulls the sword out. You look down and you see flap, no blood, no pain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No pain.
Also no pain. Let me just put it here. That's a significant feature too. It's like something this other person did for duty-bound reasons or whatnot inflicted harm physically, a physical but limited physical harm that actually appeared to cause no harm beyond the slice and no pain. There's something to that too. What did he then do when he drew the sword back? Did he drop it, sheath it, evaporate his presence completely?
He pulled the sword out, and I looked down at the wound, and my attention is focused on that. And I never looked back up to where he was.
Okay.
So I don't know if he walked away or what happened, but I immediately turned around at that point and looked up behind me.
Gotcha. That feels kind of significant too. There's a representation or the thought process you got going on is see this man, see what he represents by what he does, see the effect of his action. And at that point, after the effect has occurred, your brain says, now he's not important anymore. This was never about him in the first place. You lose all awareness of him. There's something in that too. So it's definitely saying this isn't about the man. This is about the behavior is kind of how I would look at it. He was just there to do a thing, which with that's a little double layer of meaning too, because really it's giving you two ideas of why this is about the behavior and not the person specifically. But that in combination with it's not someone you know. This is not, say, specifically your father, an uncle, a person from church that you had a argument with at some point. This is completely an anonymous person. Your brain said, who this person is doesn't even matter. Just focus on what they do. So that's interesting. So you lose awareness of him, and what is it that causes you to turn around? Do you sense a presence behind you? You just suddenly know there's someone there?
I don't know exactly why I turn around, but it's almost like I just do it. Like I just turn around and I look up, and this person in like black t-shirt and jeans is standing in front of me.
Yeah, and you did say street clothes, so it's I'm actually going to...
I think, if I'm remembering it right, I am not wearing a shirt because I can see my skin and it has the wound in it.
Right? No, I didn't catch that either. That's good. I got to I'm 55 episodes in now, and there's still little things like all the details I ask for, and I miss the idea of how do you see this wound? You're not wearing a shirt. So there's a yeah. That's interesting too. So, and then if we were to look at that, like why no shirt? Maybe specifically, your brain just did something logical, which is how are you going to see the wound if you have a shirt on? And seeing the wound and knowing immediately that it's not bleeding was a significant factor. But there might be another layer to that too, in the idea of being without a layer of clothing on the upper half is a sign of vulnerability in a way, or it leaves you more vulnerable to the elements, to social pressure, et cetera, et cetera. So there might be something in there as well of look at yourself, see this icon of yourself as vulnerable at this time and actively wounded, of course, because vulnerable, et cetera. I don't want to put too much significance on it, but the more ideas like this I lay out and percolate for you, maybe connections come up. They do, they don't. That's okay. But I wanted to at least express those possibilities and see if anything connects. And it doesn't have to connect now. It can connect half an hour from now. So, and that's an interesting thing too, where the dream doesn't give you a reason to turn around. It's almost like the dream just turns you around. Okay, next scene, next action. And so I was going to start a new page because we were going to talk about, I don't think I've ever done an episode with him sitting in my lap. The way I've got this chair position so I can sit up is he doesn't have a lot of room, and I'm holding him so he doesn't fall out in his sleep. This is my little peanut butter. We got a little Maltese puppy.
What's his name?
His name is Peanut Butter. He belonged. Yeah, we call him Butters, or Peanut Butter. No, he's gonna sleep. He is our inheritance from a deceased relative. We took him in because, he had nowhere to live. He was going to the pound if someone didn't take him. So we couldn't let our Butters go to the pound. I think he's about 10 years old. So he's got a few years left. I should put more pictures of him up. As I've said in recent Twitter statements, I'm an unabashed Maltese supremacist. My favorite, just because of him. So okay, back to your dream. There's enough nonsense. So you spin around, you see the guy, and you said he's in a black t-shirt and jeans.
Yeah.
And do you notice any other features about this person in general? Their age, their face, their composition?
I didn't focus on the face, but they kind of vaguely look like myself. I guess that might have significance.
Yeah. What kind? We'll see if we can figure that out. But a kind of vague self-resemblance.
Yes.
Size and shape similar. Say, you and I are both. We are not petite, so this person was also of a similar size and shape.
Yeah, they were not skinny at all.
Fair enough.
They were kind of like the way I was a few years ago.
Okay.
So like not really, really overweight, but it's kind of like a bigger build.
Okay.
And other thing that was recognizable is that I frequently dress like that, with jeans and a t-shirt.
Okay.
And just a plain color t-shirt. But it's hard because I didn't really look at the face.
Fair enough. And that probably wasn't necessary because your brain said it gave you enough information so you could identify exactly what you told me. So this is vaguely you. It is you. In the sense of it was not a mirror image in the dream. It's not, this is you now. This is exactly you. It's like, this is a different version of you, number one. It more closely resembles you from the past, recent past, but still. So you're reflecting back on something you did, you believe, a way you were approaching life just recently, and your brain says, okay, now remember that, and you deliver a sword thrust to that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then in exactly the same place?
Exactly the same place, exactly the same way, twisted and everything. And it was the same sword.
Yeah, I didn't really ask how that happened. Like how suddenly the sword was in your hand as you turned around. It's just there.
It was just there.
There was no ceremonial act of the robed man handing you the sword. It just suddenly it's in your hand.
Yes, in my hand, and I'm holding it the same way he was, and stabbing in the same way he was.
Yeah, there's something very much iconic there. It's like, here's something that happened and that's weird too, because this is you now acting as an intermediary. There would have been a different sequence of events if you watched yourself from the past get stabbed, and then that person turns around and stabs you today. You're now in this intermediary place where you're receiving the stab and delivering it back in time. Something very strange. Delivering it to your past self in a way that's impossible. So if we go with that idea of something done to you in the past that today you are applying or thinking about applying to your past self, maybe, okay, just a wild guess, but are you now spending more time with your brother and hearing how he has retained more of the religious convictions of your family? Are you now reevaluating how much you abandoned and looking at your recent past self and saying, maybe now today I know more than that guy. Maybe I need to apply more of the principles I abandoned. Is any of that connecting?
Well, over the past few years since I guess I can give you some backstory.
Sure, as much or as little as you want. Yeah.
Yeah. After I changed my beliefs, I went through a period where I was like extremely against everything religious. And I was almost atheistic. Not entirely. Like, I still believe there was a possibility that God exists. But over the years, kind of gradually, I've become more, like I believe in God, and I believe in a, like, higher power. But it's very vague. And since moving back here, it hasn't really changed. Like, I still have my same kind of vague spiritual beliefs, but they're not as extreme as they used to be, like extremely atheistic, like there is no God.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way for me to know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that seems to be the broader theme we're dealing with here in the dream, is this idea of processing, trying to settle on a current understanding of things from that religious perspective or spiritual understanding of the world, and reviewing the history of what has brought you to this place where now you're considering what has gone before, and in the sense of trying to figure out, what do you believe, or have you settled on the correct beliefs? I'm like a chronic skeptic. I think I've got an answer, and then I'll go, well, I should think about it again. I mean, you always should be willing to think about it, but no, that seems right. But I'll question it again tomorrow. I go on that loop in my own brain. But it is interesting too that well, it's all interesting, but the sequence, and we keep stopping to chat, which is good. That's what we want to do. But the idea that, was there any reaction from say, your distinctly different past self with the stab? Was it completely passive? Was there a freak out moment? Any reaction?
There was no speaking throughout any of this. It was completely silent. You could like almost hear the fog.
Gotcha.
Like the fog. Yeah. After I stab the person in front of me and remove it, we both look down at our wounds at the same time, and blood comes out of them at the same time. But we're both looking down at them, not like we're freaked out about it or anything. It's just kind of like that's what happened. And then we've lost a lot of blood, and so we collapse. Also at the same time.
Okay. And then that was basically the end of the dream. Collapse and wake up.
Yes.
But
collapse and then
no specific memory of I'm dead, and then I wake up. It's more like you're on the way to dead, or at least fades out into unconscious. Say again, sorry.
It's almost like I passed out from blood loss, and then I woke up.
And then the passing out is into the waking up. Gotcha.
Yeah.
There's something there too. So there's this. Definitely right off the top of my head, it's the idea of wounding yourself using the same thing, and in this idea, a sword. The sword that hurt you, you're using it to hurt yourself again, in a way, sort of. And that may be. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. One of them is you're questioning. Am I hurting myself by bringing these ideas I previously rejected back into my life, or am I reconsidering the harm I believed was once done to me by rejecting them? Does that make sense? And do you have a response? This is all
something
vague
just
in my head.
Stood out.
Yeah,
something
please.
just stood out to me as you were saying that. In the past, when I was going through this time of being very opposed to religion, I was almost punishing myself at the time, because I was opposed to these things, but I was also having some negative psychological experiences related to them. That led me to get some therapy over the years, and I was in the hospital at a time for it.
Okay.
But I was punishing myself at the time.
Gotcha.
And I was suicidal.
Okay. So it seems like, and that's not an uncommon experience, so to speak, of rebellious kids rejecting at least some part of parental advice that is actually good for you. I did it myself. And we end up like, I don't care if it hurts me. I'm going to do what I want. That's being a kid. Sometimes it's like, yeah, but mom and dad said this wasn't good for me. I'm going to do it anyway. And they're like, oh, I regret that. And then we kind of wake up to that understanding. And that's a tough thing to, it's a tough thing to reconcile with, like, our parents are only human. They're not always right, but they generally care and they try, and they are very often right, even if they're not always right about everything. And so we're always, I'd say, struggling with that, looking at like, okay, where do I listen and where do I use my own best judgment? And, those of us that obsess over those things and review stuff and actually self-reflect, which can be a blessing and a curse, we will very often go back throughout our lives and say, okay, now that I think about it, they were right about that. Were they right about that other thing too? Did I blow that off in the wrong way? Yeah, I'm rambling again, but is that speaking to your experience? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, it's
maybe I got a little off into the weeds. Sorry.
The thing that I was using to kind of punish myself it was a concept that I was taught growing up, about apostasy. Are you familiar with that?
I know the definition of the term, but maybe I don't know how you're applying it and what you were taught about it. So you could explain.
So I was taught that, like, when you leave your beliefs, like when you stop believing in Jesus and God and the Bible and everything, that you can never come back to it. Like there's no salvation from apostasy.
That is the one unforgivable sin.
Well, two, apostasy and suicide.
Fair enough. Yes.
Yeah, that was my family's logic. And while I was going through this, it was almost like I was two different people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had my own rational self, and then there was like a part of me inside my head that was telling me I've done something unforgivable and I can never come back from this. And you should just get it over with. Just kill yourself now. Get everything done. Like, that was where the suicide was coming from.
Yeah, because if you've already committed one of two unforgivable sins, why suffer an entire lifetime only to go to hell anyway? Might as well cut it short, and because it's not going to change the result. Yeah. No, I mean, that's a very logical. I've talked to people about this before, saying, suicide is actually a very logical choice based on faulty premises. The assumption that nothing will ever get better or change, or and that all of this suffering is pointless, and I might as well get it over with. And if you think about it, under certain circumstances, I mean, you're dying of cancer. It's everywhere. It's daily excruciating pain. There is no treatment. You are going to die. You might, in certain places, decide, I'm just not going to drag myself over the coals for 2 more weeks until I expire. I might just call it a day, say goodbye to family. And so there's rational choices. And then faith comes into it as well, where it's like, you can never do that. That's off the table, period. Always. Fair enough. And if that's your belief, and it doesn't have to be rational. It doesn't have to be logical. Most of our beliefs are not in a lot of ways. Sometimes we arrive at beliefs and then retroactively try to figure out, okay, why do I believe that? And then we invent justification. This is all going far afield again. Sorry, rambling. But this is just examining the human condition. Which it seems like, I mean, so we've gotten kind of to the end of phase 2, and we talked a lot about what was going on in the middle of it. But the final chapter of conversation with folks is to say, now looking back on our conversation and some of the pieces we've connected, has the meaning become clear to you? Before I start trying to tell you what I think the bigger picture is, I don't like to give people an answer so much as help create an answer together. So if you've got your own commentary on, hey, things suddenly became clear, this is what I think I understand, I always want to hear that first. So
things aren't really clear still in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I have some ideas about what it could mean, like the wounding being related to the apostasy concept being taught to me as a kid, I guess. I can see kind of how it relates to a lot of different things that I dealt with as I became an adult, but nothing really stands out to me as a sure definition of this is exactly why it happened.
Final solution wraps it all up. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, that's why we're here together, and that's why we get into a kind of a phase 3 thing. So I made a bunch of little carrots and notes as we were going along, and the things that stood out. We talked about a lot of them already in vague strokes. But if I were to I always try to do this of tell the story arc of the dream and see if that inspires a kind of crystallization. But you go from the imagery of your brain saying, okay, remember when you were in high school and you had this conflict with your friend group where you were different, and it's representing that as a very physical struggle, which also connects maybe later to physical wounding at the end of the dream. And this catastrophic crash into lava. It's like one of the most destructive forces on Earth is being, liquid rock melting you, your car, everything. I mean, that's a very strong impression. But you come out of that, so there's like almost a survival or a rebirth from a destructive process. Something had to die in order for you to come out of it, and then move into this next phase of the dream remembrance, where you've gone through that self-destructive, or at least destructive process of letting go of something, destroying something in the past, to bring you now to a very limited view of a home-like environment with a representation of a person very intimately visually connected with the color scheme of the house. So it's like, not only are you at home at your comfortable place, but here's a representation of a home-like person, a personification of the home environment in a way, inflicting a wound. And sometimes it's like wounds are not always, what am I trying to say? It's not necessarily your brain saying, look at how you were harmed. Sometimes there's a twist in that of like this, something being put inside you against your will. I mean, like, you didn't say, please stab me. It happened to you, but, and it was bloodless in a way. It was, and that's a fascinating part too, where it's like this harm, this iconic image of harm, stabbed by a sword and under the ribs into the heart, but it's withdrawn and it's all perfunctory and it's a duty bound thing. So this is just what happens. And it didn't seem to be malicious, and it didn't actually hurt you until you turn around and hurt yourself. And then that act is when the blood came out. You're having moments. You're having a moment. I'm going to shut up. You tell me what you're thinking.
I was able to kind of put some pieces together with you explaining like how the dream progressed. The stabbing, like the whole story arc, reflects my coming of age. Like the fighting with my friends, it reminded me of a conversation I had with friends in high school where I described to them how and what I believe. And the phrase I told them was, I believe in this story, the Bible story, so much that if in the future, at some point, I don't believe it anymore, it's still true. Mm. That was the way that I believed it in high school.
Yeah.
And we had some argument over that at the time. And then I can see the lava as representing me leaving my friends and going to school, like college, because I moved away, and it was a terrible experience. It was a religious school, and I don't know. And then moving back, I was at home, and that was the place where I felt kind of like all of this was coming to a head. Like, that was the place where I was living when I started feeling suicidal and changing my beliefs. And I think that the sword literally represents that concept of apostasy, because if I had still believed, it would have never hurt me.
Gotcha.
Like, it's the act of me no longer believing it that's almost like I'm hurting myself by stopping that belief. And that this dream is representative of that action.
Nice. It's nice to have those. I do this, all of this for that moment where I'm trying to tell your own story back to you in a way that you're like, whoa, the light bulb turns on and you're like, I get it. I get what, and you know, in a way it's a letdown. It's like, well, what do you do now? I don't know. Good luck with because this is a thorny issue, but this is your brain. Now you understand what your brain was trying to show you. It's like there's kind of a two-phase. Well, there's more than that, but the idea of when you've got a problem, first you got to see that there is a problem and understand its shape and form, and then you can kind of decide what to do about it. So this is kind of in those, even though it's an ongoing process in your entire life, and you are where you are today, you're still thinking about it. It's still something you want to resolve. So in your sleeping mind, based on whatever happened in just the recent past, and it doesn't have to be as I've said before, a specific event, but it can be this accumulation of a path. The further you get down, and I think it is very much related to the idea of your moving to be near your brother, and then have your interactions with him bringing up more family dynamic issues from the past that you may have spent less time focusing on because you weren't around people that reminded you actively of those struggles. And then you get this dream just a couple nights ago where it's like, okay, what do you think about what you've been through? How do you conceptualize it? And just getting that clearer picture of what have I been through? What did it actually look like? How do I understand it? Now you can look to the future and say, now that I understand it better, what do I want to do about it? How does that inform my choices moving forward? I'm rambling again. I don't know if any of this is making sense to you. What? I'm sorry, what?
It does make sense.
Okay.
I can see how I don't exactly know what to do about the dream, but now understanding kind of what it was related to, it was kind of some things that I thought I had already dealt with completely. And maybe it's my brain telling me maybe I still need to do some thinking about this.
Yeah, I think for sure that's definitely the right idea about it. Is like, there's things I thought I put to bed years ago from 30 years ago. And, yesterday I was driving somewhere or was doing something, and all of a sudden it came back to me. Like, why am I thinking about that again? What just happened in my thought process now, wide awake, that brought me to this point where I'm remembering something embarrassing from years ago? And my understanding of those moments for me is typically, those moments end up being iconic of mistakes. And we always want to remember those, like, don't do that again. And that's why some of those emotional embarrassment type of stuff comes back 30 years later for me. And it probably was triggered by me attempting to avoid making the same type of mistake right now, yesterday, at that moment, while addressing that problem. And my brain said, danger, danger, Will Robinson. This is, don't do it that way. You know this, you know better than that. And I think that's kind of my understanding of why these past embarrassments come back to us. They get triggered by current thought process, current experiences. So yeah, and far be it for me to suggest how you should proceed. Hopefully the process we've been through is enough to now let you more clearly meditate on the problem itself, and the answer will play out as it does for you, but much better than it would have if you didn't give it a second thought, so to speak. Yeah.
I mean, it would have become just another dream that I had that was memorable.
Yeah. And that blows me away too, is that these dreams, like, I don't remember my dreams very well. Like lately, I've been remembering that I did have a dream more often, which is interesting. Maybe I'm getting close to remembering one at some point. I mean, there's like maybe 3, 4, 5 total dreams in my entire lifetime that I can actually today still clearly recall. But I wake up and I'm like, there was a there was a car. It was blue. I don't know. And I'm like, no, that's it. That's all I got. I had to point to that. I always ramble. We're dreams, self-select for importance. I had to really release a little clip where I was talking about, it's like, it's the ones we remember, the ones that stick with us, the ones that feel like, what was that? What was the ones that make us wonder? The ones that we remember, those are probably worth a second look. And hopefully people, watching out there can do this for themselves. It's always easier with a partner, so to speak, someone to kind of give you that feedback to help you try and put the pieces together. But I hopefully people watching these videos can see the process I use, kind of go with the intuition of it, and you can just talk to your friend, your neighbor, who your dad or your sister, whoever is willing to listen and do the feedback thing with you and try and help you put the pieces together. I think anyone can do this, and I think it's pretty beneficial to just get a better understanding of these things. But I'm rambling again, toot my own horn. Stop. So we're about an hour in. I mean, these things can wrap up when they wrap up, when you feel like we've hit a satisfactory understanding for the moment. We can keep talking. You said you had a couple other dreams you wanted to just maybe give a look at. I'm cool either way. We can keep going. We can wrap it up.
I can probably talk about that one dream that I mentioned earlier where the house is related.
Sure. Yeah.
So I kind of did some thinking about this dream already, and I can just tell you the story, and we can go
for it. Yeah, we'll get it 2 for.
So, yeah. So the dream starts. I'm standing in the courtyard of like an old dilapidated house. And there's a wall around it. The wall is kind of crumbling, and the whole house is just falling apart. And I can sense inside the house there's some darkness, some evil, and it's calling me to enter. And there's like a door that's kind of cracked open, and I can feel it looking at me and kind of beckoning me inside. And instead, like, it feels like it's going to be a nightmare. I'm feeling fear. But I have a moment of lucidity, and instead of going inside, I decide to turn around and climb over the wall. And when I drop down on the other side of the wall, I'm standing in a giant wheat field that covers rolling hills, and it goes all the way to the horizon. And the weather changes. It was overcast when I was inside the courtyard, and then it changes to a beautiful sunny day. I turn around, and the house has disappeared. And it's just this field of wheat. And I start running, like I'm happy, and I'm running through the wheat. And I start to shrink and get shorter and shorter. And as I go over the top of a hill, I see down at the bottom of the hill, there's this cottage. The front door's open. There's like clothes on a clothesline in front of it. And there's a dog laying down in front of the open door with a litter of puppies playing around the dog. And I recognize the dog as my mother. And I have now turned into a puppy. And I've run down the hill to the front yard of this cottage, and I'm wrestling with a sibling, and I wake up as I close my eyes.
Another kind of short one, but with a lot of wonderful, vivid imagery. Yeah, there's yeah. I mean, so the story arc, bam, just now that I've kind of activated my neurons a little bit, you've got this, you're in a place with this invitation to evil and this fear, and it's like, you can stay here. This is an option available to you, and you will be welcome. and you're like, I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. And you make your escape, and suddenly there's that, by the act of rejection, the evil place literally visually in the dream disappears, gone. You, by turning your back on it, it went away. Not like you had a sense that it was still there calling to you, but you made a decision, you left, and that took you home. And very interesting that you've got this wide open field, and so there's a rejection of this evil thing, which, whether it is or not, doesn't matter. It's your conception of whatever is evil and to be rejected. Making that choice left you wide open field where you can go anywhere, and where you chose to go, or where your dream mind took you, was home, in this very comfy place, and this shrinking feeling of it's like, it's interesting that you had the shrinking feeling before seeing the house and the mother dog, and realizing you're a puppy as well, and joining the comfort and the tussle, and it's returning to the past, to a simpler time, to that play, comfort, the ability to play in comfort and freedom, protected in a welcoming environment. Got all that kind of stuff going on there. That's my reaction. And you said you had given it some thought previously.
Yes.
So how does anything I say kind of fit with what you were thinking as well? Or completely different understanding? Go for it.
Some of the things are similar. I recognized the leaving of that house, of the dilapidated one, as leaving fear behind, and rejecting the concept of fear. At least fear of evil, like fear of the unknown evils. And when I returned back to the cottage, I kind of recognized that as not a return to home, but a return to like comfort. Like, this is my idealization of what home should be like. It wasn't what mine was like. It's like what I hoped it could have been like. Yeah,
for sure. That was kind of the feeling I was getting from it too, of like, it definitely the idealized version of the comfort of home. Yeah. Do you recall anything about what you were struggling to understand at the time, or going through, that may have spurred you to need to see this image and play out this representation of this choice in your mind?
It came at the end of a very dark period in my life, when I mentioned before I was dealing with some psychological problems.
Yeah.
And this came kind of close to the most.
I think you froze up a little bit there. I'm losing some of your words. Sorry.
It was like I was afraid of my own mind, or an aspect of myself. And this came at the end of that, where I rejected that fear of myself.
Gotcha.
And I kind of grew past it. I still dealt with some problems after that, but not nearly as hard on myself about it.
Yeah, good deal. So this was definitely like a sleeping representation of the waking corner you had turned in your mind at the time. And there's probably a bit of reflexivity. Like I'm trying to use a math term, reflexive, but where it's like one didn't cause the other; they caused each other in a way that's bad. It's a bad explanation.
Yes.
But that
makes sense.
You get the idea. Yeah. And sometimes that's what we need. We need that. Sometimes even if we've made a decision and we've thought it through and we grasp the reasons and we're pretty sure it's correct, there's a crystallization process in the mind where it's like we want to make it more pithy. It's like you can write an essay or you can write a one-liner like Oscar Wilde or Walt Whitman, or distill something to its essence, that's something we can hold on to. And so sometimes that's what the dreams are as well. It's like all of the stuff you've been thinking, it's just like this. And then you can just hang on to that image and that experience and return to that as an understanding with less words and more understanding. It's something I'm not good at. I use too many words. I'm always trying to be more. It's kind of fun being on Twitter for that reason. It's like, can I say what I'm trying to say in less than 200 whatever characters? Sometimes no. It comes across poorly, but it's nice to try and make those things easier for other people to understand in a very, very crystallized, shortened, more pithy form.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, that's very good too. Yeah. And sometimes our brain just celebrates, like, you have a good dream about a recent experience and it's like, just enjoy how much fun this was. And sometimes we celebrate our victories over bad decisions or turning a corner onto a better path in our dreams in the same way of like, just hang on to this feeling because this will sustain you. This will help you stay on the path you've chosen. Wow. Again, I still feel like I'm rambling again. So did you want to talk more about that, or we've covered that second one loosely, but sufficiently?
I can just mention that dream was important to me throughout my healing process.
You did hang on to it, yeah.
Yeah,
good.
I drew it a couple of times.
Nice.
Throughout. I drew it one time when I was in the hospital. And it helped me to deal with some of the things I was going through and explain my story to the therapist and stuff.
Very nice. And that may have been, if we look at what was the reason for the dream, is you were struggling with how to explain what you were going through. And your brain said, try it like this. See if this makes sense. And you said, yeah, I can draw that. I can explain this. I can show what this means to me in this form. So brain always problem solving. It was trying to give you an answer to it's trying to meet a current need in that sense by giving you what would be useful. Yeah.
And it was almost like it was meeting a future need, because I had the dream and then I drew it a year and a half later. That was when I was in the hospital.
Wow. Yeah. Even better. That gets into some crazy stuff with dreams in general. Is like, so I do this purely psychological. We're going to relate it to associations and icons, and we're going to look at your real life experiences. And then there's all the other stuff. Lucid dreaming. I can't do that. I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what to make of it. Prophetic dreams. I've had people say they had a dream, it came true, like deja vu style, 1-to-1 correlation. I've been here, this is happening, I dreamed this. No idea what to do with that. But I don't.
Yeah, it was almost like this was. It's almost like this was a preparatory dream.
The premonitory.
Preparatory.
Preparatory.
Like
gotcha.
preparing me to talk about the things I was dealing with.
Absolutely. And there's two ways to look at that too, in terms of like, of course this is something you were going through, purely physical connections. And then there's the spiritual side of things of if you're inclined to believe there is a benevolent force that wants you to succeed, maybe these things get placed there to help you in the future. I don't discount any of that. I'm not going to tell you that's true because I'm not sure, skeptical side of me, but if someone believes that and that sustains them and they're like, this is proof of my faith, God bless. It's as far as I'm concerned. And I tend to be on the agnostic atheist side of things, where I have more of a, definitely the agnostic side, where is there a God? Maybe. Do I know? No, I have no idea. Let's say there is. Can I describe it? Do I know what it wants from me? I don't think so. I have no idea what's going on. Now, I appreciate various religious systems, and I'm a big fan of like all the way back to, tribal stuff, to the Greek and Roman gods, to the development of Christianity, and to the different world religions and Buddhism and stuff. I think they've all got something useful to say. I'm not a participant in any one. Maybe I'm close to the kind of Zen Buddhist stuff in practice. I just like to be lazy and chill and not give people a hard time if possible. So that very, very much appeals to me. But I also appreciate the Christian stuff. Like, I don't know if you watched any of the Jordan Peterson lectures on the Bible.
Oh yeah.
Those are amazing. You've watched, go ahead. Sorry.
I watched. Yeah. I really liked his series on the Bible and kind of like making sense of what the stories mean in philosophy and some psychology stuff.
And that's the angle I come at. And, he talks about people say, well, are you a Christian? He's like, well, what do you mean by God? Put all that aside and just look at the stories of like collected human wisdom and how those stories are the same stories told in other tribal cultures throughout history. We've got flood stories all over the place. Some people say that proves the Bible's true because it says the flood happened. And on the flip side of it is, flooding and disasters are a part of human history, that we've always had to deal with this. What does it mean? And how do you plan for it, survive it? Why did some people survive and other people didn't? And what can I learn from that? Genius. I love that stuff. So anyway, now we're off on world religion talk, which honestly, it's all connected. Wherever the conversation goes, I'm fine with it. My brain's squirrely with connections. I live in an abstract world. I have to pull myself down to concrete reality sometimes. But anyway, if you feel like we got to a pretty good point, you're satisfied with the experience, we got just about an hour and a half in. That's good enough for me. I wouldn't try to keep you all day.
Mm-hmm. No, it's been really good talking to you about these dreams.
All right.
Kind of making sense of what I've experienced.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. And I shouldn't have closed this document because I'm going to use this again. We're going to do the wrapping up thing. So I'll say goodbye to the audience, and then if you'll hang out for just a minute afterwards, and we'll decompress from the whole experience. But once again, I'll say, hey, to our friend Michael from Tennessee, thank you for joining me. This is always fascinating. People think, you guys out there, you think your dreams are not that important. I find them all fascinating. I have not been disappointed by one person I've talked to in terms of it being an interesting experience. And I always hope people feel the same way. I'll just say to everybody out there, hey, please, once again, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about the channel. I need more volunteer dreamers. Like, buy a coffee mug, a t-shirt at spring.com. I got 9 working on 10 books of historical dream literature. And that's enough shameless self-promotion from me. I'll just say, everybody, thanks for listening.